What's up, YouTube fam? Robbie C here, and today we're going to cover 3 reasons why you may not be able to throw over 350 feet. But before we dive in, we have got to ask the most important question of the day. How you doing today, Bill? You having a good one?
So catch me if I fall.
So we released a video here on the channel, feels like almost a year ago, that talked about 5 reasons why you may not be able to throw 300 feet. Now I want to continue to grow with you and progress with you as, you're growing and progressing inside of your game. So today we want to talk about that 350 foot barrier, because I think for lots of people, they end up crossing the 300 foot threshold, but then they just get stuck right around that 300 to 320 foot mark. And there are a couple major reasons that I think people are not able to cross that 350 foot barrier. And I want to go ahead and say that the road from 300 to 400 for many is even harder than the road from like 0 to 300. But I want to sort of tackle 3 things that if you focus on these, I actually feel like it's going to help you push through the 350 to 400 foot like mile marker, wall, barrier, point of frustration that makes you question whether you should continue to play this game, continue making content, not to make it like personal or anything, but like if you happen to fall into that category. So here are 3 things that I've struggled with that I think you should look at. We'll start with the most obvious that you're going to hear talked about in a lot of videos, and then get to 2 more personal ones that I think are sort of a little more common and easier to fix. And maybe we'll even sneak in a bonus one in the middle. The first reason I think that people can't cross that 350 foot barrier is a combination of a poor nose angle and launch angle. What do we mean by that? Nose angle is the angle of sort of as you're throwing the disc, the front of the disc in relation to the line in which you're pulling it on. And that line we pull it on is the launch angle. So if we think about coming through and throwing a shot and we're pulling from higher up, sort of at shoulder height, to a release point that's here low, what we can have is our launch angle being negative because we are throwing it in a downward trajectory towards the ground. And your body does tell you, Bill, I know you don't want to throw this into the ground. You just got said hello to on the channel, and because of that, you're like a little hyped right now, and therefore you're just going to launch this. You yeet it straight into the ground. So what does your body do alongside Bill? Your thumb gets involved in the process, and as it goes, it's going to drive into the ground, which then causes the front edge of the disc to pop up. So if we think about this in a downward trajectory, I am throwing in a negative launch angle, which is me pulling the disc down, and I'm throwing with a positive nose angle. What that's going to happen is when I release the disc, it's going to do a little air bounce so that I don't do what my body thinks I shouldn't do, which is throw it straight into the ground. So lots of folks are going to tell you if you just start throwing nose down, that's going to help solve some major issues. But you can throw nose down, and if we don't correct the launch angle, well, yeet! You're just going to throw it straight in the ground. Now remember that nose angle is the angle of the disc in relation to the angle of which we're throwing, or the launch angle. So if we work on this by creating a more positive launch angle, we can see that as we do this, it becomes actually easier. If you just do this exercise with me while you have me on a video, or while you have me on your phone, or you have me on your computer screen, whatever it may be, if you just take a disc, sort of pivot backwards, and you pull it through, you start low, start at your rib cage, and even bring it to your shoulders. I don't even think you should be releasing this high necessarily, but we'll just do this for exaggeration purposes. If I start with the disc at my ribs and I bring it high, when I do that, if I try to throw it in a way with the sort of nose up, I can exaggerate, put the nose up like so, and if I pull through, this feels like I'm pushing hard, like I can feel that resistance coming through, and it gets very difficult, and I can almost imagine that this isn't going to go very far. Whereas if I just think about it, if I just pull this through naturally to here, as I'm trying to throw and thinking about even throwing it flat while I get to that top side, you can see that I'm naturally putting the disc in a nose down position here. Ribs to shoulder, boom, we're nose down. So when I think about that I want to throw a disc nose down with a positive launch angle, I can start by moving slow and trying to do exactly that. Starting it low, coming to a middle point. Start it low, come to a middle point. Start it low, come to a middle point. Now, just because you throw it on a certain angle doesn't mean that the disc isn't going to stall out. That was a super high launch angle. So let's try to flatten that out a little bit. To flatten it out, I'm not going to think about, like I said, releasing at the shoulder. I'm going to think about starting at the ribs and coming through, trying to release around the pecs. Here. Bang. Just nice, smooth, trying to pull it through on the other side. The throwing motion is an athletic motion that is very fast paced. And so if we don't slow things down and train our body on the proper swing path, we can't expect it to just overwrite these muscle memories we have. And one of the muscle memories we have could actually be inhibiting you from even being able to do exactly what we just talked about, which is setting it low and sort of bringing it to a higher positive point, or where you're throwing that positive launch angle. Now you're gonna hear person after person talk about why you need to focus on getting the disc nose down. And I wanna remind folks that you can throw a disc far with it being nose up. It's just a little harder to do so, but one of the biggest reasons that we want to find consistency in throwing the disc nose down is because we start to get the disc to behave how they're supposed to, and at least consistently behave how they're supposed to. Take this pig and my child that I lovingly refer to as Precious Child, which is the most understable throwing putter I have in my bag because this pig has been in my bag for 5 years. If I take that pig and I throw it nose up like I did here, well, you can see that it doesn't look understable at all. In fact, it fades out pretty far into the OB. But if I just simply focus on getting the nose down, suddenly this goes from an overstable flight to a dramatically understable flight, which is what I would expect out of the disc. If I'm not able to consistently hit that angle, well, when I step up, Precious Child might be the right disc that I should have chosen to throw on the hole, but by throwing it nose up, I'm not only going to sacrifice distance, but I'm going to sacrifice the shot shape that I'm looking for, and thus find inconsistent results that are not where I want them to be, both distance and area of the hole. Speaking of area of the hole, I was not prepared for there to be water, but thankfully we have a new sponsor over here on the channel. Introducing our newest sponsor, Vessi. You can see here that we are ankle deep in some water because the Luna happened to land right in a lovely spot. Man, tough for most disc golf shoes, especially because if I get this soaking wet via my shoes and I'm stepping into this deep of water, like I'm truly to my ankle right here as I am standing in the water. We find little spots of water all throughout the course, even right next to the basket. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is hole 3. So if I were playing a standard round and I landed in this much water, all I would be thinking about is, okay, well, I may have to take relief further back to try to find a dry spot because I don't want my feet to get wet and be wet throughout the rest of the round. Especially here in the South where it's going to be really hot. I don't want my feet to get wet and then just sort of bake in a soaking oven of moistness. Yeah, that's a word to describe how uncomfortable we all feel with wet feet. But thanks to Vessi, I don't have to worry about it. I can simply walk straight through the water, get the lie that I'm looking for and that I've earned, and not be too worried about stepping through and walking through the water to get as close to the basket as possible while standing worry-free in these puddles, thanks to my Vessis. And I especially want to take a moment to talk to those of you who play in tournaments, because I know when you get out there for your first round of that Saturday morning C tier and you're throwing some warm-up shots, nothing feels worse than going to warm up and realizing before the first round even begins that your feet are already soaking wet. It's going to be a long day and you're going to be putting a lot of miles on those feet, especially when they're moist. And that's where Vessi really comes into shine. Two of my favorite parts about Vessi are the comfortable fact of the woven fabric, so it feels incredibly comfortable to put on your foot, as well as the price point. I just can't speak to the price point enough. I know for some people they want a cheaper disc golf shoe because they just don't see the investment is worth it. But what I love about Vessi is that by investing just a little bit more, I have the comfort of still being able to walk through water with 100% confidence and certainty that I'm not gonna have wet feet at the end of the round. It was honestly Such a pleasant little surprise when I walked up and saw that my disc had landed in water, because in other disc golf shoes, I still would have had a little bit of nervousness that it could seep through the laces, it could seep through other parts of the shoe, and that the waterproof guarantee wasn't there. But thanks to these Stormburst high tops, I know that I'm filming the rest of the day and I'm not gonna have to be worried about those soggy feet at all. So one of the best ways you can support what we're doing here on the channel is by supporting those who are supporting us, and that is Vessi. So you're gonna see a QR code on the screen as well as a link in the description that you can use to get a discount on your order. Y'all, it is so cool that outside companies are willing to invest in disc golf, and they're seeing opportunity inside of disc golf. And one of the coolest ways that we can continue to see disc golf grow is by supporting these opportunities. So if you've been curious at all about Vessi, I know they've been in a lot of disc golf videos lately. You've been waiting to hold off on that trigger. It would mean the world to me if you were willing to support in this way. So thank you to Vessi for believing in us, and thank you to you in advance for your support. Our last two tips of the video definitely blend together, but we have to walk through them in the sequential order that I'm presenting here, because I think a lot of people start here and then skip straight over to the other one. But the second reason that I think most people are not throwing 350 and beyond is because we're trying to throw too hard and not fast. So what do I mean by this? I mean that we are creating these opportunities and these moments where we are just trying to yam into the disc so hard, and we're putting all of our upper body strength into it, and we're just trying to crush the disc as hard as we possibly can. And let's be honest, there are people out there that, as Broderick would say, are just athletes that are able to muscle the disc to farther distances than lots of people are ever going to be able to do. But in all honesty, one of the best parts about disc golf is that it is accessible for even people that don't come from a super athletic background. But there's two key signs for folks that are trying to over muscle, because while you can try to use the muscles of the upper body to do certain things and create certain speed, there are other muscles that also matter, such as the separation of the upper body and the lower body to coil, because when I do that, I suddenly don't have to throw as hard because my body is working with me to let me move fast. A classic look sideways is someone who is throwing with just trying to yeet and over muscle the disc is someone who, when they go to throw, as they reach their X step, they're already sort of turning the body backwards. You can see here, this is a very common look, and I'm coming through, I have the disc in position, and when I go to reach with this X step, I'm suddenly backwards. We want to think about the upper body and the lower body, in my mind, as like a disposable water bottle. We remember those days in middle school where you would twist the water bottle over and over again, and you would sort of unscrew the top, and then all the pressure would let out and it would shoot the top off like a gun. We want the coiling, or the separation, to be the lower body and the upper body working somewhat independently of themselves, because when I cause the upper body to be one way and the lower body another, you can see that some tension is created in my core, and that tension is going to allow me to unwind, to let loose. But when I reach and I go into the disc golf throw and I find myself taking that X step and turning my body entirely backwards during the X step, now when I go to reach forward, when I go to separate those two pieces, it becomes a lot harder to get the lower body forward without bringing the upper body with it at the same time. So instead of having this release moment where everything sort of catches back up to one another, such as in a proper way where my upper body's forward, my lower body is starting to twist backwards because I'm going to the X step, but then they cross. The lower body's going to go forward and the upper body goes back to create that coil. Suddenly I feel the tension that I can unwind and let loose. The other beautiful part about the coil here is that when I hit that point, my body now knows, because I've planted properly up here, my body now knows it's okay for things to come through and fire accordingly. However, if I'm waiting back here and I get backwards too early, and instead of giving time for the disc to sort of slow down and have a moment to come through and crash, I get impatient all the way back here. So then I start to lean in and I fall into the shot, and I lean into the shot, which causes the disc, as you can see, to pop up, which puts me in a bad position to throw with a negative launch angle and a positive nose angle. Meaning that no matter how hard I focus on keeping the disc low down here, if I'm backwards too early and I go to slam into the shot and try to throw hard, you're gonna see that disc rise up every single time. When I try to muscle the disc and I put too much tension into the muscles, everything's gonna tighten up, and tight muscles are not going to be as fast. It's a pretty good distance. Now let's see conversely when we try to just add some coil to the shot and try to move through fast rather than just slamming into it. Offline, but so much farther. You can see as the disc comes through and around, the speed of which, even if we put these two side by side and slow them down a little bit, you'll see how much quicker we come through adding that coil, which is going to create a lot more power and distance potential, which is important to note that if you're making the jump from one distance threshold to another, you're gonna lose some accuracy for a little bit, which is where we found ourselves for the last really month and a half. Is we're gaining power, but aiming it has been a little tough. And at the day we're filming this, we are a little under a month until we head to the Discmania Challenge. So hopefully we can dial in the accuracy in the next month. Now, as a quick bonus tip, I do want to talk about one thing that I do believe could be hindering quite a few people in this 350 threshold, and that is disc selection on its own. Sometimes wanting to throw a certain disc or throwing a certain type of a disc can really be holding us back from our distance potential, because there are times where, based on how currently we are able to input speed and power into the throw, aka our arm speed, we struggle to get the flights that we need out of the discs. For instance, currently in my bag, I have a Luna and I have an A5, which has come from dropping a mid-range out of the bag in order to create those slots, because I really loved the distance potential that the Luna gave me, but it didn't have the stability that I really wanted, because I knew that if I wanted to throw something that had reliable fade, most of the choices that I was going to have were a little overstable and didn't have necessarily the distance push that the Luna did. Here you can see me throwing the Luna, and it goes dead straight for a considerable amount of time, and it was easy distance to get there. However, it just doesn't really seem to have a ton of fade at the end of it, compared to this A5 that I'm able to throw, and it holds that straight line, but it doesn't push as straight for as long, but it's going to reliably fade every time. We even have some of these, in full transparency, other shots where I actually grip lock the A5 a little bit and pull it to the right, but even when I do that, it's not like it just burns over. All of them had finish at the end, which is something that I love out of the disc, but I'm certainly going to be sacrificing distance potential to get the shot shape that I'm looking for. Now, a place that this shines the most is your max distance disc. For instance, these are all for Raiders, but they're in very, very different stages of wear and tear. You have this being the most seasoned Raider in my bag. You have this being a straighter to understable Raider, this being the most overstable Raider that I normally bag, and then this one is a fresh one that I grabbed off the shelf. Shout out 2020 Titletown Classic. This was the second one they ever did. Crazy. Now, I may be convinced that the Raider is my max distance disc, but as I continue to throw these, you're gonna see that the Raiders themselves are not all created equal. So when I'm trying to find my max distance disc, sometimes it could be a seasoned Raider is what I'm looking for, and it's the perfect disc choice. But there are other times that if I don't have a seasoned Raider, that maybe going to a different mold or different option is going to unlock that distance potential. Here is seasoned Raider. You can see we threw that so nose up, and it still got turn out of it. If we throw any of the other Raiders like that, they're gonna go nowhere. Let's try Sharingan as the one that's in my bag as a reliable flyer. Much better. We threw that one nose down, more nose down than we threw the first one, and you can see that it didn't get any turn out of it. Going with our third Raider, the Renegon, which is an overstable Raider. Held straight, never even thought about turning over. And then last but not least, a fresh Raider. We were able to pull that one to the right a little bit, but the only reason that it ended up that far right is because we pulled it. We got the best hit on the fourth one, but it had the least dynamic flight, because this is just the difference. Sometimes choosing the right disc truly can be the difference between major distance unlocking and shorter distance. Our third and final tip is one that has been sort of the boon of my distance journey, and that is I think people aren't patient enough in the throw and are trying to rotate too fast. But whoa, Mr. YouTube man, you told me that we needed to be, rotating through fast. We need to be spinning fast like a Beyblade. Let it rip. Yes, I hear that, I see that, and I think that there are two very obvious schools of thought. That there are people who are extra rotating through the throw, and there are people who are just predominantly arm coming through the throw, but their arm can come through unencumbered, smooth and fast. What I mean by rotating too fast is sort of over rotating, or you're gonna hear people use the phrase collapse the pocket. What this means is that this is the power pocket, right? This is where we want to be. Ideally, we want to be in a deep pocket where we want to have the disc a little more forward when we're trying to throw. So as I come through and I'm in this deep pocket position, what happens is instead of getting to deep pocket, because I'm further back and I'm coming into the pocket position, as I start to rotate forward, my elbow never gets far enough forward to sort of bust down the door or be there. So as I rotate into this weaker position where the shoulder has collapsed and the elbow never has an opportunity to get all the way forward, which means that I'm not able to get the disc as through and out as efficiently and fast as possible. And moreover, I'm gonna end up rounding a little bit because I have to let this come to the point here where then the disc comes out and around, which is going to create an inconsistent release point, less spin, and less speed on the disc. So how do we fix it? Well, let me go ahead and speak to one of the biggest reasons that I feel like two of the biggest reasons I should say, that I end up seeing this happen for me most often. One is, we already somewhat touched on it, but if you get back too early, you end up waiting too long, so your body says, we gotta go now, we gotta go now. So you end up trying to rotate in, or you end up driving too hard with the backside because you've heard from person after person that you're supposed to punch down, you're supposed to reach through, you're supposed to drive with the off. These are all things that help when this is maintained, because as this being maintained, you can see if this is up and it's strong, I can rotate through as fast as possible. One of the things Blitz talked about when we first started working together is that in a dream world, we're like a pole of a robot that has another pole coming straight off of it that is unencumbered. I can spin that pole as fast as possible, and at the end of this pole is a hinge that when it reaches its whip point, it opens up automatically. However, if this pole is loose or unattached, everything collapses and everything folds backwards, which just creates less power and less pop in the end. So by getting backwards too early and being impatient, I don't wait for the right hit point for everything to set up for everything to be able to fire through. And the second, and I would say one of the most common, everybody wants to see a good shot. We end up looking forward, trying to find the forward position, and we're looking for the shot to be successful. So what happens is that our head rotates out, through, and around, and now, because we've over-rotated with the head to get forward and gotten the head all the way up here, the shoulders have turned forward as well, and so now my hit point, if I were to maintain that shoulder integrity and that elbow integrity, well, my hit point is gonna be a grip lock way off to the side. Our anticipation and excitement to throw good shots and throw big shots can often hinder us because we don't trust the body to just throw the good shot and know that we're gonna see the result a few seconds later, not even a full few seconds later, a split second later, and be able to appreciate it for everything that it is. Now, if you're someone like me who was driver averse for years, and honestly until the last couple of months still felt driver averse, I even told Clint about a week ago that one of the best things about seeing the improvements and really feeling like we're starting to maintain this shoulder integrity a little bit better is that suddenly I'm not crazy terrified every time I put a driver in my hands. But if I were stepping up to this shot right here that's over 600 feet and it's just this beautiful open shot where you really want to see a disc fly to perfection. If woods golf is what disc golf was designed to be, this is your dream shot right here because you're just going to rip one out there and watch it hopefully just soar. So there's a lot of pressure and expectation being put on the shot before you even throw that I'm nervous about seeing it, which is going to tighten my body up. And I'm going to be nervous about the result. So I'm going to try to get through to that result as fast as possible. So all these issues are going to compound. I'm going to end up rotating too fast and too early. I'm going to get my head all the way forward to see the shot. And I'm going to manifest a bad shot happening instead of trusting myself to come through, fire, And then as that firing happens, I can sort of bring the head up and around because I've given the body the opportunity to fire out and then come up and around. If you're struggling by having a collapsed pocket over and over again, it sounds so silly, but one of the best things that I've found is just to slow things down dramatically, feel those mechanics over and over again, and know that it's going to shock you how a slower mechanic actually creates similar distance to just raw speed. And then we eventually build up to the speed. That's why, as I said in the previous tip, not the disc selection, that these two sort of work hand in hand. Instead of just muscling the disc, we have to build the right swing path, let the body work together, maintain that integrity of what the body wants to do, and then smash the boomstick and go as fast as possible. So I've got 6 distance drivers in my hand. 5 of them stay in the bag. This one is here just for the video, so we'll throw it first. But the other 5 have been in the bag for a good bit of time. I'm not going to throw my Defender because it's silly overstable and I would never use it for shots like this anyways. But let's put on some chill vibes and just hopefully see some cool discs fly. Let's take our deep breath. Too early. So to wrap it up, as you could see, some of those shots went really well and sort of carried to the right, and then others faded out early. I'm throwing with enough consistency in the other aspects to be able to hit that 350 mark consistently, but that 400 foot barrier is still awaiting me. And as you can see, like I said, if you start to embrace these, I think that you'll push past that 350 foot marker way faster. And the 400 foot barrier is going to be right around the corner, where we can lean in and sort of embrace spinning at the right time, not over rotating, not collapsing the pocket. 400 feet is very much within range and very much being achieved. And my hope is that by embracing these tips that you too are going to start busting open some distance thresholds. So were there any of these that stood out to you? If so, what was it? Did we explain in a way that hasn't been talked about before, or was someone explained a similar concept in a way that really clicked for you? I would love, as always, for the comment section to be a nice resource for you. So thank you so much for watching. Hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Please make it fantastic for someone else too. But for now, we're going to leave you with the birdie.